Bo, you knocked us all off, it says.
Sorry about that. I have no idea how I did that.
Looks like we're getting everybody back. So I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda? Rocco, there may be something you wanted added to the agenda about the fee schedule feedback that didn't get added.
Yeah, I just got temporarily kicked off, so I'm assuming.
We all did. We all did.
Oh, okay, you're just quicker than me. Yeah, so I don't know at what point we want to put it, probably later discussion items, maybe
Yes.
8C. Recommend the addition of fee schedule update.
Okay.
I move to approve the agenda with that addition of item 8C, fee schedule update.
Okay. I will second it unless I have another second. Ladies, but basically, hopefully you can hear everything. Lisa,
I can second it. It's Lisa.
okay, please go ahead. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, passes. Consent agenda. And we put up the minutes from our last meeting. Rocco, I made a few changes. I think you made some changes. See, let's just both check and make sure they're there. Bo, is Phil McIntyre there? Yep.
He is here in the room. Yep.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, Phil. All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
That I was present, right? Remember?
Mhm.
We corrected.
And then I corrected that here.
Okay, great. Thank you. I move that we accept the minutes as written.
All right. Lisa, do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Anne. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? It passes. Do we have any public input this evening, Bo?
I don't have any public input from town hall here. Is there anyone on Zoom with public input?
I don't see anyone. Looks like we have someone joining us. Let's double check. Oh, no, that's Nick. Okay.
Trustee Donzello, do you have any public input?
I do. I'm sorry. We got disconnected somehow.
That was my bad.
I had a couple questions, two questions. Is legal present right now on the phone?
Yes.
They are.
Austin.
We do have Austin Flanagan on.
Okay, outstanding. All right, so we have a moment for two questions that I have.
Yes, we're going into our questions for Austin here in a minute. This was public input right at the moment. Did you have something for public input?
Yes, so two questions. One was just out of curiosity, if we were to ever change the mission for Planning Commission, that we weren't going to utilize them as adjudicating body, and that appeals would go to the Board of Trustees, would they be able to handle applications if we changed, 2 or 3 lines of code? And which leads me into the second question, which is in the event that there ever was an appeal, there is no adjudicating, or I'm sorry, a Board of Adjustment any longer. So what would the process be actually for an appeal? Yeah, so the first question being, if we were to change it, because then, we don't have to worry about residency issues for volunteers on the commission. And they could focus on actual applications instead of appeals.
Okay, those are next two questions, Austin, and I'll let you address them first. After that, everybody on the commission has sent me, or some have sent me questions. So I'm going to start into those after you deal with Nick's questions. And then commissioners, wait. If your question is being brought up by me and you have follow-ups, feel free. But if you have not submitted questions, wait until the end so that you can make sure that maybe your question isn't already addressed by somebody else. So if you don't mind, Austin, to address Nick's questions.
Yeah, thanks, Lamar. Thank you guys for having me. It's good to see all you guys again. So I was actually hoping to take kind of a step back, if that's okay. Can I do like a quick 10,000-foot intro really quick? Okay,
Yeah.
Great. So I just wanted to go over really quick. I think, again, I wasn't part of the previous conversations, but I've been filled in by staff about what some of the issues were. And I thought maybe just a quick 10,000-foot view at the issue might be helpful to start things off, and then happy to dive into all the specific questions as well. So whenever you're implementing a new land use code, there's always this period of sort of discomfort, especially when you had a lot of changes to the procedures, as we did. We had a lot of changes in the LUC to procedures, and we had a lot of changes to whom reviews what types of applications. And a big part of the mission in the LUC redraft was to streamline all of the review processes to make it easier and quicker for folks to get their approval, especially if it was approvals that the commission or the town saw as fairly low controversy. And so if you look at table 5.1 in the land use code, that's sort of your bread and butter for the review procedures. It gives you a summary of who approves what and how that process goes. And then if you keep reading on in that chapter, you'll see all the nitty-gritty details about those approvals. But table 5.1 is really your bread and butter to understand at the high level how applications move through the approval process. And then afterwards, if they aren't approved, how they move through the appeal process. And so it's all summarized right there in table 5.1. So one thing you'll notice is that the Planning Commission is listed on every single application. Every single application in the new land use code, the Planning Commission either recommends or decides, or is an appeal body, or some combination of the three. So what that means is that the Planning Commission acts as a quasi-judicial body on every single application that is administered through the land use code. So just wanted to do that big picture of sort of how the current drafting is done. And again, we did that intentionally. We did it intentionally because you have a very savvy planning commission that wants to be involved and that knows this process, that did a huge part of the drafting of this code, is really familiar with the ins and outs of it. And that wanted to take some things off the Board of Trustees to be able to streamline the approval process. So again, that was kind of the big picture intent of how we ended up with the procedures we did in table 5.1. Okay, so with that in mind, knowing that the Planning Commission acts on every single application, every single land use code application in the town, that means that pre-judgment type of considerations always apply. So taking a step back, what is prejudgment? Prejudgment is a legal theory that actually came out of case law, and it was interpreted from case law, from the due process clauses of the US and Colorado constitutions. So due process is all about impartiality. It's all about, if I'm going to be adjudicated on something, if someone's going to make a decision, if some body's going to make a decision about me personally, about my application personally, then I deserve an impartial adjudicator. I deserve the right to be heard at a public hearing. And so because of those principles of due process, courts have come up with this theory called prejudgment, which essentially just means if you are the one who gets to decide on the application, if you are the Planning Commission in a major site plan, and you have that authority already written out legislatively, then you must make that decision at a hearing when all of the evidence is presented and allow both sides to give their testimony. So you must allow the applicant to say, I think you should approve this for X reason. And then you can have that back and forth dialogue as a part of a public meeting where minutes will be taken. That way, if you have an appeal of that decision, so you decide not to approve it for whatever reason, all of those minutes become the record of decision. So if it ends up getting appealed, say it gets appealed locally, then that record is what the appeal body gets to decide whether it was the right decision or not. If it gets appealed after that, it goes to district court, then the court can only, by law, they can only look at the record. They can only look at the minutes of that meeting. They can't look at anything prior, it doesn't come in. Okay, so the whole idea here is to promote fairness, right? It's to say, don't decide on my application before I actually have my opportunity to be heard. And the example I give to folks, and maybe this isn't helpful, but I find it helpful, is that if I was walking into a courthouse and I overheard my judge, who I knew was going to adjudicate the matter as a plaintiff in a case, and I heard the judge say, this is a slam dunk for the defense. Like, this guy's got no chance. I don't even want to hear what he has to say. I would feel like due process wasn't being served in that matter. I would feel like I'm not getting my fair shot at proving whether I'm right or wrong in court. Okay, and I know I can ramble a ton, so I'm going to do my best to keep this short. All that to say, so I put this in my notes, and I don't know if this is helpful. So I said planning commission equals quasi-judicial and every single application under the land use code as currently drafted. That means due process rights are triggered. That means prejudgment is a consideration, a legal consideration for every single application. So the planning commission can't say before a major site plan is given or is noticed and at a public meeting where the planning commission is going to decide on that major site plan. They can't say at the meeting before, say that major site plan has got no chance. Like, you know, this is wrong or that's right or whatever it is. They've got to wait until that actual meeting where they're making a decision. So as I understood it, and maybe this is a question tonight, maybe it's not, there was a question in your last meeting, and again, I wasn't in attendance, just got an overview of can addresses, property addresses be included in a staff report? I think the answer legally is yes, they can, but it elevates the legal risk. And so what do I mean by that? If you include the addresses in the staff report, that in itself is not a legal issue. But what it might do is cause some sort of prejudgment issue where you say, you know what, I know that property and it's totally not right for this application. Or I know that property and that property owner. I'm going to go talk to them before the hearing next week and make sure that they say this or make sure that they do that and give them sort of that unfair advantage. Okay, I'm going to shut up there and then turn it back over to you, Lamar, and maybe we can go through each one of the questions. I don't know if I answered your question, Trustee, and if not, I'm happy to go through them as well, but I'll stop talking for a moment, and Lamar, if you want to direct me from here.
If I can sort of guess at what many of the commissioners are wondering, as well as what I think Nick was asking, what if we changed the code such that only the BOT was the appellate body and the planning commission wasn't involved in appeals at all? How would that work?
We would have to definitely talk through that because you would have some matters, for instance, a rezoning, where the board of trustees would be the decision maker and then they would turn around and be the appellate body. And so we were really deliberate about choosing the review and decision and appeals to try to minimize that as much as possible. For instance, on a major site plan where the planning commission makes the decision, we made the board of trustees the appellate body in those matters so that you have an extra layer of due process. It's not the same people that just told me no, telling me again no. So we really try to be intentional with these procedures. We would have to do quite a lot of unraveling to get there. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it would be a whole lot of unraveling.
Gotcha. So I think the other question, as long as we're on this topic, fiduciary duty. I think we need to address that a little bit because I think the commissioners feel uncomfortable being planning commissioners, and basically for months, we haven't seen anything. We haven't done anything. We question our existence. We question our purpose. Should we even be meeting this often? Should we just meet whenever Julia needs us to meet? And maybe this is a little off topic, but when we simplified everything, we were expecting staff to do the simple fences and decks, and Julia's ended up doing those too. And so I think there's some concern from BOT, Nick being here for one, about the expense as well. So it almost feels to us like we haven't simplified it, and we've added a whole lot of expense, which I think is another issue to address for BOT and for Nick. So I may have combined too much there.
And no, that's a great question. That is fixable, or these are all fixable problems. That one's more easily fixable. So I mean, it would literally just be shifting over. I'm looking at table 5.1, shifting over the responsibilities. So if you don't want town staff to decide minor site plans, which is what we looped in for the fence permit and decks, so fences, decks, it's all under minor site plan now. If you want to be the decision body there, you just move everything over. So planning commission gets the decision, and then board of trustees gets the appeal. So that's a much easier fix. You're just kind of plugging and playing. Changing the appellate bodies will be a substantial lift, like very, very difficult.
Okay. So another follow-up question on what you had talked about. So once something's been approved, a fence, a deck has been approved by Julia, we still, it's still best that we not know the address, because why?
I think you can know the address at any point. I don't see a direct legal issue with you not knowing the address at a pre-application stage, in the middle of the application, after the application has been decided on. I don't see an issue with that necessarily legally. I think it heightens the risk somewhat in the example I gave earlier to say that, hey, you know what, I know that property address, I know that property owner, I really want to make sure this deck gets approved or it doesn't. And so you start prejudging the issue, and you start, leveling the scales in a different way. And I think that's why staff decided to make the decision of like, let's just remove that as a possibility of let's not get into that back and forth on applications, because it will get into prejudgment land really quickly. And so I believe that's why the decision was made. But to say, like, I have clients that do it, I have clients that don't do it. My clients that do it, they put it in a staff report and they'll say, address, application status, but you're not allowed to have a back and forth on it. So when they're giving that staff report, it's not appropriate for that future body to say, hey, what's up with that fence permit? I heard this, I heard that, and I don't like this, or whatever it is. You got to wait your chance until you actually have that matter in front of you. It's noticed and all of that. Did I answer that question? Or?
Well, so it's equally a problem to be pre-app, mid-app, or even once it's approved. You see that all the same as far as the risk. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. Just in the way that you have approval authority on every single application in the town, whether it be appellate or the actual decision.
Okay, so we're not making most actual decisions, unless we make the change that you talked about regarding minor site plans or minor issues. So what is our fiduciary duty? It feels weird to be completely blind all this time, and yet aren't we responsible for everything that's taking place, and we have no clue what's happening? That feels a little weird regarding our fiduciary duty, and maybe it's not a problem, but it feels a little weird to be completely in the dark.
Lamar, can I make a quick comment? It sounds like we need a process for this. Is that right, Austin? It's Lisa.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? A process for?
It sounds like we need a process for this. We're kind of talking about whether it's right or wrong or what we should do. We need to set up a process of, how this should roll.
Well, I think we already have that in the current land use code from what I'm hearing Austin say.
This is,
Well,
could I ask a question just to, is it on?
yeah, get closer because you're really sorry.
Oh, can you hear me?
That much better.
Okay. I was gonna say, you know, under the new code, the staff makes a lot of decisions, which does speed up things for all of our neighbors, which is nice. But if some neighbor doesn't like what they did, don't they have the right to appeal within, it takes them like 30 days they've got to say, I didn't like what you did and I can appeal?
Yes,
Is
they
that a
do.
problem?
Yes, yes, they do. We're getting off track just a little bit. Let's stick with the original question about fiduciary duty, Austin. Is there any way that we have not done our fiduciary duty if we are completely in the dark?
So here's how I'd answer the question. It's going to be your classic lawyer answer, so get ready. I think the fiduciary duty is set by state law. State law says that planning commissions shall have the fiduciary duty to make and create a comprehensive plan, and then all duties set forth by their review body. So by the Board of Trustees in this case, that's what state law says. So taking it down another layer, fiduciary is created by your Board of Trustees. So when the Board of Trustees approved this land use code, they set the fiduciary duties for the Planning Commission. They decided you will decide on all of these applications and you will be the appellate authority in all these applications. And then all these other applications you shall or shall not have authority over. And so that's how the fiduciary elements are set. Again, that's legislative. That's something that you can change by changing the land use code if you wanted to. Did I answer your question? Kind of not really.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just not used to carrying out a fiduciary duty completely in the dark, so it's felt a little weird to me.
And I do think, so there's two applications that are staff level decisions. It's the minor site plan, and remember, yeah, that's all the fence and deck permits. It all got swallowed up into minor site plans. And it's the temporary use permit. And so we chose those two processes for a similar reason that Anne was just discussing. And it was that, you know, they were kind of check the box applications. If you meet these standards, you shall get approved. Let's get these people through the system as quickly as possible. Let's just have staff check off, like, yes, they met these, they check these boxes, you get your permit, you've done it. You don't have to wait for the next hearing. You don't have to go present in front of a public body. So that was kind of the logic behind why we did that. If I'm remembering correctly, I know it was several months ago. So it was just those two types of applications, but taking a step back, when we consolidated all of your other processes, we put a ton of them into the minor site plan process. And so I think that's really what's happening. And so there's really two questions to ask here. Is this the appropriate body to be making that decision? Or have we swallowed up too much in the minor site plan process that needs to be pulled out to the major site plan process?
Okay, those are good questions for us to answer. And I think that's something that BOT, Planning Commission can look at regarding cost and responsibilities one way or the other there. I'm going to look back because we sort of got off on this whole question. Rocco, is there anything around this topic that we have not covered that you had asked?
Well, it sounds like, I mean, I heard what I wanted to hear. Austin, thank you for the high level, but you also said that we, the Planning Commission, can know the address in those staff reports at any point in the process. It's a matter of the balance of risk. Staff has chosen to go with not allowing the addresses to have very little risk. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. I don't think it's what the commissioners want. And, you know, if we as a planning commission serve as an appellate body, we already know there's a prejudgment consideration because the applicant has already not received the answer they wanted from the initial decision maker. And so, you know, let us know the address, because if something comes to us as an appeal, we will already know that it's been denied or the petitioner has not received the initial answer they wanted from the decision maker at town staff level.
I think that's the point Austin's making, is that the fact that we already know that, and then may start our little brains churning, that could be viewed as prejudgment. If they bring it in fresh, we've never heard of this address, we have no idea that it's been denied, we have no clue what's going on. There's no doubt it's fresh. We can't have prejudged it because there's no way we knew about it. Does that make sense, Rocco? I mean, that's what he's saying. Whether or not we want to do it that way is a whole nother question, but does that make sense?
So if someone comes to us with an appeal, the planning commission doesn't know it's an appeal?
No,
If
we know
someone
it's an
comes to me
appeal.
with a minor site plan, I already know the decision maker's town staff. If it comes before a planning commission, we already automatically know it's being appealed. So it just seems unnecessary to hide the address. And I think town staff needs to share the information with us, because it's kind of a red herring. Put the address in. If someone comes to us with a minor site plan, we already know the decision's being appealed.
I'm not sure. Did you want me to respond to that? I think maybe it's an internal discussion is what it sounds like, and it's kind of needs to be a policy decision between staff and the planning commission in my mind.
Who makes the final decision, planning commission or staff, Austin?
It's a staff report. So I would imagine staff would probably make that decision. And most of my clients, it works like this. I'm not saying this is perfect. This is just, as a matter of fact, how it works in most of my clients. At the end of a meeting, at the end of a planning commission meeting, when you do your commissioner reports, they will then have an opportunity to say like, hey, it would be really helpful to know like where we were at in this, short-term rental scheme. Are we going to change it? Are you seeing any applications for it? Whatever it is. And they would ask staff like, hey, do you have the ability to let us know how many applications you've gotten for this? And then in the next meeting, they would say, yes, here's how many it is, or sorry, no, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. So that's how the dynamic works in most of my clients. It's the commission asking and then staff saying like yes or no because of X or Y reason. I think in this case, and I don't want to overstep, I know Julie knows more than I do about this decision, but I think that staff did make the decision, like the town made the decision that it just carries too high of a risk, and we're going to engage in this back and forth, and there's going to be a lot that sounds like we're beginning to make a decision on something to which we might actually make a decision on later legislatively. I don't know if I'm explaining that right or.
It makes sense to me, and you're right, it's an internal discussion, but it sounds like we don't have the planning commission does not have the ability to make the decision. It is staff that makes the decision.
Yeah, I think so, because it's an allocation of staff resources. So certainly, if it became an issue, the Board of Trustees would always be the final one to make the decision. But I see this as sort of like an administrative day-to-day, how administration functions.
So the other internal discussion that needs to take place, or the question that we need to decide, is if we do want to move more of the minor site plan duties to planning commission rather than having staff deal with it to lower costs or whatever other reasons we might want to discuss. So that's a choice, what I hear, and an internal discussion is what I heard.
Yeah, I think that's a policy decision, so it's out of my hands.
So bottom line, the jobs of planning commission, our role, our mission statement is basically all on table 5. And I don't know if Bo wants to share that or it's easily done, but we could just go through that and talk about what planning commission's job is, I suppose. Is that the easiest way to do it, Austin?
Yeah, I have it up. I can share my
Okay.
or I need the authority to share, it says. I don't know, Bo, if you're able to do that.
Bo, can you let him share?
You should be good to go now.
Alrighty, thank you. Let me know.
And
You
this
seeing it?
goes to the core of a lot of the planning commissioners' questions is what is our role? What's our mission? What is it we're doing? And so I think
Okay.
it'll help to go through this.
Can you see my screen or
Not yet.
oh, you can't?
No.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it says you're. Okay, let me try again. Just has like the scrolling.
Now we are. Yeah,
Okay,
we got it now.
okay, cool. Okay, so this is table 5.1 in the land use code. So first you have your legend. It's pretty simple. R is review and recommendation. That also means it's going to be quasi judicial if it comes before the planning commission, the board of trustees, because that will get swallowed up in the record of decision. And then D equals review and decision. So you're actually deciding on the matter. A equals appeals. So if you look at the planning commission row, you can see every single application you have authority over. There's no application in the town you don't have some authority over, which means every single application that gets submitted to the town, you act as a quasi judicial body. Whether you actually see it as a quasi judicial matter is another question in the case of an appeal. But every single decision, you still act as a quasi judicial body, meaning all of those due process concerns, the prejudgment and impartiality will apply. So we look at minor site plans and then temporary use permits. Those are the two to which town staff has the ability to decide on. And again, these are all hyperlinked, if you remember. So if you wanted to see more about what's a minor site plan, you just click, oh wait, sorry, my server is down actually, so you can't see it. But in your draft, you'll just be able to click on 5.3D or 5.3C, and it will take you to minor site plan, that section, and it will tell you all of what's included and more details on the process. So you do act as the appellate body on both of those. So if staff denies an application for a minor site plan or a temporary use permit, then you will be the appellate body making the decision on appeal.
Hey, Austin, could I trouble you to zoom your screen in a little bit to
Yeah,
blow
you got it.
Town Hall?
Oh,
That's
Lord.
amazing.
My server's down, so we'll see if it actually. It's okay.
That's
Can you
good.
see-
That's good. Okay, so to
okay.
slow down just a little bit, so we have minor site plan. The D means that town staff is making the decision. The A in the little parenthesis means we're the appellate body for that.
Correct.
The major site plan, town staff reviews it and planning commission makes the decision on it. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And DOT is the appellate board.
Correct.
Conditional use permit, we got 2 R's. So town staff reviews it and recommends, and then we review and recommend, and then BOT makes the decision. Is that accurate?
That is correct. And you would act as the appeal body here. It's not, you don't see that here because it would be confusing to put both an R and an A. But because planning commission serves as the board of adjustment, you see that later in the procedures. All appellate proceedings that aren't specifically listed in the table are heard by the board of adjustment. And so we talked about this at one point, but we decided against doing the double letter because we found it to be more confusing. So anyway, yes, that was
Okay,
good.
so how is it we get to review it and also be the appeal board, which seems to be a prejudgment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think there are some, prejudgment concerns because you're giving a review and recommendation. That's part of the record. And then the board of trustees is the one actually making the decision. So say in that case, you review and recommend approval, and then the board of trustees decides denial. You get to decide finally on the matter. The way we resolved this, and this is nitpicky and we can get to it once an application actually gets processed in this, right? Is the standard of review you have is different. And so you're not reviewing it the same way the board of trustees is, or even how you were reviewing it in review and recommendation. And I know this is getting a little technical, but so review and recommendation at that level, you're reviewing it whether it met the criteria in the code. at the appeal level, you're reviewing it to decide if the Board of Trustees made an error in their decision.
So we're reviewing it, when we're the appellate board, we're really reviewing the actions of the BOT, basically.
Yes, ma'am.
And their process, okay. I guess we can keep going on this, temporary use permit, town staff makes the decision, and we're the appeal body. So I think, again, part of the issue was when we made these decisions, and again, this will be an internal discussion, but we thought of town staff as, you know, our internal paid town staff. We were not thinking of an external contractor, you know, making the minor site plan decisions. We were just thinking more of the major or complicated stuff, but I realize that's not your purview, really. But that's sort of one of the things that's not working the way we thought it was going to work.
And also, you always have these periods in a land use code where in theory, you're like, we got it 100% right. And then when you start going through the process, you're like, you know what, we want to tweak this. This isn't what we thought. So there's always that implementation process where things are a little bit different in practice, and you can always go back and, you know, I think the great thing about this land use code as well is like, even if we didn't completely nail it 100%, it's in an organization, it's in a form, it's all hyperlinked in such a way that's very easy to amend, and that's low cost to amend going forward. Not saying you should like go and change the whole thing. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully most of it works, but just to say.
So that was going to be one of my questions is, I know there's some amendments that Julia has discovered in her processes. There's some amendments that need to take place with this. And I don't know what all those are, but we're working on our budgeting right now. And I had a question for you about how much should we budget for legal work? And I don't know, Julia, if you can estimate hours or how you could talk to Austin about this, where he can give us an idea of budgeting for legal work.
And I'm happy to talk to you about that offline, Julia, if you like, or we can talk about it now.
We need to talk about it now because I have to make my recommendation tomorrow.
Okay. I don't know. It depends on the extent of the changes. I am super efficient. Most people that write a code like this probably charge 5 times the cost of what I charge to get this done. Actually, literally, that's true. Like we have another client that did a code that I would say is definitely not as quality as this one. They charged 5 times as much as I did for the town. So I pride myself on being super, super efficient. But that to say, I couldn't give you an estimate unless I knew what we're going to be tweaking. If it's little things like this, if you're just saying like, hey, this body reviews it and we want this body to, probably takes me like 15 minutes to review that. Like it wouldn't take me very long if it's just one quick thing. If it's a big thing, if we're saying like, hey, we think we got the appeal process all wrong, we want to completely unwind how we do appeals in the land use code and think about it completely differently, that's a big change. That would be a big lift.
Julia, you want to
answer your question?
Comment about what you've seen so far that you think needs work?
You can, are we good?
We can hear you.
Okay. There are a few things that I'm noticing, and it really is mostly procedure. And Austin is incredibly efficient with the time to rewrite some of these sections. And it does depend. If the Planning Commission is coming up with something that, if it's a small thing, I'm going to take the sensitive land stuff because I think there could be a little bit of refining in that section. And I'm just using that as an example right here. There are certainly going to, for simplicity's sake, we can, with the commission, we can do that internally and decide what the intent was and really where you're going with as a policy. And I think Austin's time would, I know that this is not an exact, would be fairly minimal. It really is going to be in the process of me bringing this to you, bringing this to the trustees and that time. And then it is just a matter of amending it. So I think Austin, I think we could certainly iron that out. Oh, you have until tomorrow. For professional for professional services, there was a presentation at the BOT level that did a swag of I don't know if it was 15,000. Does anyone remember? It was like $15,000, and that was professional services for the next year for planning professional services. And that's a pretty healthy budget for this town, considering all the work that you've already put into this. Austin, can you? I guess we can't really talk about minutes but can you give anything further to that if we wanted to create some policy? It's not going to be a lot of your time, right?
No, I don't think it would be. I think we could. I mean, again, it totally depends on the extent. If you come away from those policy discussions saying like, this whole section's not working, this procedure is wrong, obviously we'd have to do some unwinding, but generally, yeah, I think we'd be looking at some pretty straightforward tweaks. And if we wanted to create a policy generally of like, this is what we do for planning applications, Jeff and I would probably have a bunch of those to send you as an examples. And honestly, you could probably just plug and play.
There's also the opportunity, given the structure of the code, to create maybe these checklists that the planning commission gives, because and I mean the planning commission and the board of trustees can say the procedure for developing a site plan would be this, as long as it's consistent with the code. Really, that can be done without doing too much code amendment.
Yeah, if you want to do an administrative policy document, which some of my clients do, that would typically live 100% outside the code. I would approve it as a resolution by the board of trustees saying the administrative manual for the land use code. And it would basically just be a public facing document for future applicants saying, hey, you want to redo your fence or get a permit? Here's the place to go, and these are the steps to follow. And if you do X, then you get the permit. Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't be doing much of that. So I would imagine I would just be reviewing it. So my time would be super, super minimal.
I'm not sure if you, Chair, if you have what you need in that. I know you've got a big meeting tomorrow.
I had no idea what you had in mind, Julia, when you had mentioned that you wanted some tweaks done, but you're giving us a better idea. It sounds like planning commission could work on it first and then maybe run it by Austin to see if he would have any issues with what we put together. And with your guidance, I guess, Julia, we could probably put it together ourselves. Is what I'm hearing from you, Julia.
That's my understanding. I mean, there is a certain amount of cost, but it wouldn't be. I think what the planning commission may be imagining is Austin working for hours and hours and hours, which can, of course, get a little steep.
Well, I think all of us in this process with Austin found him to be. I work with a lot of attorneys, and he's extremely efficient and did not overcharge us yet at all in the least, and we didn't have much money left to do it with. So that was very much appreciated and well done. I want to turn this back to planning commissioners. Nick, what have we not addressed that y'all want to address before we let Austin and potentially Julia go?
This is Ann.
Yes, ma'am.
I wrote you a question, Lamar, about why don't we have a board of adjustment? I know so many towns do. Woodland Park does. Does it have something to do with zoning that we haven't addressed yet, or what is it?
Austin addressed that earlier. We do. And Austin, do you want to address that again?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. So we did talk about this one, and here's how it works, right? So by state law, you must have a planning commission, you must have a board of adjustment. They don't say if those bodies have to be separate. Most of my small clients decide that they're the same body. That's what we decided to do here. And we did that for
remember.
staffing purposes to some degree. That way, you have a really well-informed body, use them to the maximum potential. So that's what we decided to do, to say that the planning commission and the board of adjustment would be the same body. So you do have a board of adjustment. If you look in the definitions of your land use code, you'll see it's defined as your planning commission. So that's kind of a way that we were able to kill.
How do you, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why. It just doesn't. And home rule towns can make different rules than state rules. But if it's in the state statute, how can we separate it?
That's another great question. So in this title of the Colorado Revised Statutes, it says, except as provided for by the governing body. So it says that these are the general rules for your planning commission. These are the general rules for your board of adjustment. These are the general rules for your governing body. But if the governing body wants to change any of them, they have the authority to do so by ordinance. And so statutory towns are set up that way. That's the default rule, but they're able to change them. Almost all of them do. The last time this provision of the code or of the state law was changed was in the 60s. And a whole lot has changed in the planning world since then. So almost no even statutory towns follow the state law anymore. They have their own ordinances for how they go about their planning matters, including planning commission and board of adjustment.
So now this sounds weird, but at one point the board of trustees were looking at appointments to various things, and they took it off, removed it. But they had put in there for the board of adjustment that it was Lamar and me. And then they took that off, and I was so confused by all that.
Hey, this is Todd. If I could just interject, I think we're talking two different board of adjustments here. We got one for land use that's defined in the land use, and then we have one that's defined in our Municode. And what we took off was the Municode. Okay.
I still don't understand. Well,
So-
it's okay, whatever you
Yeah.
decide.
So anyway, and I think where we were going was if we needed a board of adjustment outside of land use, then the board of trustees would appoint one.
But we don't need one for land use. You're saying it doesn't exist for the planning commission to ever be the board of adjustment.
No, what Austin said was our body, the commission, is also the board of adjustment. It's one and the same. And that's per the code we wrote.
But then then they can also appeal to the trustees after us. And then the next step is district court, right?
So, the appeal procedures are laid out in table 5.1. So if you've got a little A in one of those cells, you are the appeal body for that application. If you don't have an A in that cell, there's no A in that row, you go to the board of adjustment. They are the default appeal
it's the same
body
people.
unless stated otherwise. So if it's stated otherwise, then a different body acts as that appeal.
Okay, whatever.
All right,
Thank
is
you.
there anyone else that has a question while we still have Austin on? And I just want to remind everybody, we're paying Julia and Austin per minute while they're sitting here. So we need them to be here. We appreciate they're here, but let's try to be efficient with our questions. Nick, you're good?
I am. Thank you for answering our questions earlier. I appreciate that, Austin. It's great.
Absolutely.
Rocco, anything?
No, it sounds like staff needs to decide whether to include the addresses, which I am advocating for.
Lisa, anything?
No, thank you.
All right. Austin, thank you very much for spending this time with us. We appreciate all your efforts and the clarity you've provided. And basically, we just go back to table 5.1 if we have any questions. That tells us everything. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'll see you guys soon.
All righty. Julia, do you have anything else for us? Is there any kind of report or anything that we need to hear? Do you want to, Rocco, do you want to have that discussion with her? The internal discussion that was referenced earlier while she's here?
The internal discussion about the addresses. So I don't know. Well, they said Austin said his background was that staff decided about the addresses, looking at the risk. But it sounds to me like, it's partially personal preference, and also when you're mitigating risk, you have to look at, the severity of the consequences if something were to happen and the likelihood. And I think we have some pretty seasoned folks. We get trained once a year in sunshine laws and different things there. So there's some mitigating factors there that could prevent this prejudgment consideration of coming in and spouting off and saying, oh, this, I know that address, that's not appropriate. I've never heard that at any planning commission meeting. So I think the risk is pretty minimal. And so based on that, I would advocate for including the addresses. Again, we know what our role is, right? In the table 5.1. So if any of the fences, decks, anything ends up coming to us, we know without even being told that the petitioner has appealed the initial decision. And so I would advocate it's pretty low risk to include the addresses in the staff report on the ongoing projects in town.
Yeah, do you mind if I get some clarification? Because ultimately, do you mind if I do that?
Go ahead.
Okay. And I don't make these decisions because I work for the town manager. So what understanding that this is something that all the commissioners or most of the commissioners are advocating for, and there's a solution here. Would this be, walk me through what this looks like. I'm going to bring a staff report. Is this monthly, quarterly? What does the commission want from, so that I can take that to the town manager?
Rocco, your thoughts? I mean, I think quarterly is plenty. What do you think, Rocco?
So the planning commission used to be the eyes and the ears. We used to have a town clerk treasurer named Chris Frandina who lived in town, and she was very aggressive with enforcement. She's not, doing that job anymore. And so, just basic things like you see work going on at a house, has that been approved? Where is that, And so that's why I think the addresses would be helpful. And I also think it would be helpful just to get a monthly report of where things stand with different applications. It doesn't necessarily need to be Julia here on a monthly basis, unless as needed. But what I would like to see is that the tracker, where things are in the process, but also to include the addresses.
Lisa, Ann, do y'all have comments? I know this is something Mike has mentioned he'd like to see. Lisa and Ann?
I would just like to say, I think we should leave it up to the trustees to make that decision. Period.
Austin said it was the staff decision. Lisa?
A monthly? Is that what you're asking, timing wise?
Or any comments? Is this something you want?
Monthly.
Monthly? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Rocco makes a really good point. This is a small town, and there's a lot of us who see work taking place that is not there's no permits for. And if we had at least a list of what's in progress being worked on, we would know that it's being addressed or it's not being addressed.
From a compliance standpoint, I will say that the staff appreciates being kept in the loop, because that really is, it helps us.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
basically, we have no staff that lives in Green Mountain Falls. And so it's kind of up to commissioners, citizens, you know, there's nobody else that's really taking care of this.
Absolutely. And so the tracker, and I think this is the kind of thing that, again, this is not my decision. I'm happy to bring whatever Becky, the clerk, and the Board of Trustees, and of course the commissioners want brought to a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting. Monthly seems reasonable to me. But again, I don't allocate resources. So I can take that back. This seems like something that can be decided pretty quickly. We're in November now. So if Becky thinks that this is something great, I think we can start that process of refining a tracker type system for December. And we will establish a process, as Lisa was saying. I bring something to, and then we include it in your packet so that it's posted for you all to read and for the public to read. And then it's not for discussion really at, you know, the individual addresses at the meetings, unless it's being brought forward for a decision. And why don't I bring that to you, either in a tracker form or something from Becky saying how we're going to proceed at the next meeting.
That sounds good, and I appreciate Rocco's comment that you don't have to bring this to us, Julia. You don't have to be at our monthly meeting at all. It can just be part of the report or part of the packet that Bo puts together for us, and it's there for anyone and everyone to see. So that makes sense.
That does make it very convenient. I can hand it over to Bo.
Right, and I don't think it adds a lot of extra expense, hopefully, to create something like that.
No,
Hey,
because I keep these records anyway.
Sure.
Hey, this is Todd. I do have a question.
Go
Um,
ahead, please.
would it make a difference between approved versus unapproved?
Well, for the situation that we talked about where we have no staff living in town at all, I think it's important that we know what's even in progress. It doesn't matter whether it's approved, not approved, whatever. If it's being worked on, we'll know, okay, that neighbor's in compliance. This work is properly being done. And I think that's the big issue. So that's unapproved as well as approved.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious.
I guess that brings one more question to my mind. So, Chair, what you're saying is if someone observes work going on in town and there is nothing in the tracker about that particular address, then we know for sure we have a compliance issue and it has maybe not been approved. So then there would be some feedback from that person to the staff that there may be a compliance concern.
Exactly. Because right now we're just kind of shooting in the dark.
I have a little question. When you issue a permit, do you do now like they do with the Pikes Peak building people and give you a piece of paper to post that you have a permit? Would that be helpful?
So, Commissioner, you're asking if there's something that you put on the door on the property.
Uh-huh.
We don't do that. The only time we as a town post the property formally is if it's required in the code. But that does bring that does bring a good point.
That happened to us a long time ago when Chris was the enforcer. And my son was putting some new shingles on the little front of our old house. And she walked by and said, "Do you have a permit for that?" And so we went down to the city and they kind of laughed at us and gave us a permit and we put it in our window. they said we didn't really need one, but she was out there looking. And we did put a permit in our window that we had the right to put new shingles on the front, by the front door. So it's just an idea.
Well, it's an idea. The other consideration is that for decks and fences, it would be a lot of extra expense and work to expect staff to create that, put it out there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
We put it in our
I
own
mean,
window.
it's certainly something we could do, but we probably would have to change code to do it.
Would you?
Here, and I think this is a good, I think this is all kind of what we're talking about, creating policy and creating procedures with the planning commission feedback. If the commission thought this was a good process, it wouldn't, Nathan actually was creating little certificates. It wasn't anything expensive when a permit was issued, not to put in anyone's window, just for them to have as a record. I create a staff report that is an 8.5 by 11 just paper. But it really wouldn't, if the commission thought this was a good idea and this was a good step forward, staff wouldn't necessarily post the property, but the individual homeowner could. The public works will post the property on something like a variance that is required by code. They'll dig the post and put that out there.
So
But
I have I didn't mean to interrupt. I have a question from the audience.
let me just make one more statement. So if it's the homeowner's choice to either put it in the window or not put it in the window when it's not in our code, then it still doesn't help us because they may have a permit and we drove by, but they didn't have it in the window, so we still don't know. Anyway, I don't see how it helps unless we put it in code. Yes, what's the question?
This is Eric Caldwell. I was wondering, the marshals are driving around every day. Supposedly they're very observant. Wouldn't they be great people to they don't have to know what's going on, but just to notice when something changes? They should be our eyes and ears because they're seeing every street every day.
Eric, that used to be a long time ago, that used to be a role of the marshals. Currently, they have not been instructed to do anything like that, but I think it's an excellent idea. It's just not in play right now.
I was actually at a code enforcement item today with the town marshal, and he just, to keep it straight, he does reach out to me frequently and inquires, is there a permit here? So they are trying to do that.
Good. Well, I know there's a lot of days they're not on our road, so I don't know that they cover every road in town every day. So, Lisa?
Yeah, I think Ann's suggestion is a good one, and I don't care if they, put it somewhere maybe that can't be that seen, but it's a thing. Oh, I have to have that permit. So it is I don't want to say ownership, but it's a responsibility that, if you got a permit? Oh, I better have a permit. It's more open, we're all kind of sneaking around and, did they get a permit? What's going on? And I think that would be more on the up to do that. I think it's a great idea. And I don't think it would cost a lot at all.
Well, I agree. It's a wonderful idea. I don't think we can enforce it without code saying that they need to that they have to post this. So we would.
Sure. So we could make a change. Right. So we could start making a list as we're talking. What do we need to amend on the code? That seems like a good idea. I think that's one.
Okay. Julia, are you keeping a list to go along with your list?
I have a list. And, I'm going to look into the issue of posting the property because there are procedural things that we require that go, and I don't want to say they go beyond the code, but if I'm asking for certain things from a site plan, it may not be listed in the code. Nevertheless, it is required for someone to submit. So let me see where we can find a happy medium here so that we don't have to do an amendment. And if let's look into that, because it's a good idea.
It is a good idea. Absolutely, it's a good idea. Bo, can we add that to future agendas so it doesn't fall through the crack and this is just ongoing business so that we check back on this topic?
Sure thing.
Thank you. I think that I don't want to keep Phil McIntyre here too much longer through a whole lot of stuff. Is there anything else that I'd like to get to him next if that's okay. Is there anything else we want? The other internal discussion that Austin has said that we need to have, and it may just be with Planning Commission, is whether or not we want to take it back over some of the minor site responsibilities. And I think that's an internal discussion. I don't know that that's something that we have to have Julia here for. Is there anything else that needs to be brought up for Julia?
So Lamar, I agree, as Lisa, with what you just said. I think that's an internal discussion, and I still think we need to know the volume. We haven't seen a list. I mean, what are we talking about? We don't know. And then number two, I just wanted to speak to Julia's. I know I said that we need a process, and someone said, oh, we already have a process. We don't. We're all unclear about this. Should we have labeling of the address, et cetera? So can you put that, Bo, also on our discussion for internal, that we need to develop just something firmer? Here's what's going to happen, period. So we're not all wishy-washy about it, if that's okay. Julia, is that what you were intending? Or meaning?
Commissioner, I'm unclear.
Okay. I mean, just in general, it seems like you're working with the staff on one arm. We're not knowing what's going on. I think we need a better process that how we're going to, not necessarily, well, one is we're dealing with the volume if we want to pull back, but how are we going to learn of exactly what you guys are working on? Can we have a monthly report? That kind of thing, what's going on? That's my opinion. Thank you.
May I ask a question, Chair?
Of course.
Commissioner, does Rocco's, Commissioner Blasey, I just got informal, recommendation for a tracker monthly, does that address your concern here? Are you reiterating, or are you asking for something in addition?
Lisa, that question's to you.
Oh, she said, Commissioner Blasey. I'm Bonwell. Okay, that's all right. I just still feel confused about what's happening, what our function is, how reporting is occurring. I just would like a better process for that to firm it up so we're not wondering, and so we know we have expectations that we know of that we're.
So Julia's question to you, Lisa, is the discussion that she had with Rocco about a tracker that would be a monthly report about that she's going to take to Becky to ask, can she do this? Will that address your issue, or do you have something over and above that you need?
I'm not exactly sure what I'm still unclear about how this, when I come to a meeting, what's going to happen? Is Julia going to be there? Is she going to have something to report? Is she not? I mean, just what's the routine? I guess that's all I'm asking. And I don't mean to be so vague. I just want it to be further explored as we go forward. We can certainly, this tracker, I don't have any specifics that we need to have Julia go to Becky and so forth. I don't know exactly what should happen or what seems to make the most sense. Just a clarification is what I guess I'm saying.
Okay. Let's start with these few things that we've ironed out, and as we kind of develop this relationship and process, if the commission doesn't feel like they're receiving the information they need, then we develop further. Is that a safe approach?
Lisa, does that work for you?
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay, so just to clarify, to tie a bow around this, what is gonna happen next is Julia's gonna talk to Becky and explore the idea that we would like to have staff, probably through Bo, not necessarily Julia coming unless she has something to bring before the commission for us to decide, so that we keep expenses down. And it would just be a tracker that would be, the information would be in our packet, and it would have addresses and what's happening with each of the applications that Julia's dealing with. And we're trying to get permission for that through Becky. And Julia will get back to us on that, or Becky will get back to us, or Bo will get back to us, and then we'll have more of a process. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that what everybody understood?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being with us, Julia. Are there any other questions or comments for Julia?
Question, I want to make sure, I believe statutorily we were required to have a meeting each month. I would have to double check on that. I believe in the municipal code. Is the commission intending to have a December meeting? And if so, because December starts to get, it looks like it would be the 12th of December. Bo, are you tracking here with me?
I am with you. The 12/12 PC meeting is gonna have to be rescheduled for another day because the BOT is meeting on that day for like the 2024 budget. It's a doozy. It's a big one that day.
Wow, they keep grabbing our meeting date.
Do we need to change our meeting routine? This keeps occurring. Do you
I
guys
think
need the second Tuesday?
I think it's just been recently the way holidays and election days lined up. It was kind of the best we could do to schedule it, but it hasn't been in conflict. Typically all the rest of the year, it was really just November and December's meeting.
So do we want to move to Monday again, the 11th? Does that work for you, Julia?
I'm asking to make sure that I have availability, because it looks like I'm going to be bringing some things to you and working through our process with the commission. I also want to check back and make sure that that doesn't put some sort of undue pressure or burden on Bo for preparing 2 packets in a row. So just checking in with everyone.
We can make that happen if need be. It's okay. Would the 19th work? I think the 19th was the regularly scheduled BOT meeting, so you would essentially be trading with BOT.
I mean, that gets tough the week of almost Christmas. My gosh.
I know.
I can do it.
I can do it. 19.
Commissioners, Bo, Julia, who can or can't do that? I think I heard Lisa and Ann say they could do the 19th.
You did, yes.
Of course, we don't know about Mike. Rocco has the 19th for you.
Yeah, I can make it.
Julia?
Oh, I don't travel for the holidays. So I'll be here.
Okay, Bo?
Yeah, that works fine for me.
Okay. Let's do it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, Julia. I had no idea that they grabbed our meeting night again.
I didn't either. I just want to make sure that we're all good.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Good
Thank
night,
you for
everyone.
being on this meeting, helping us work through this process. We appreciate it.
Happy
Thanks,
Thanksgiving,
Julia.
everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as
Thanksgiving.
well. Okay, let's jump ahead and let Phil McIntyre give us his report, and we can have our discussion stuff here in a bit. Anybody not okay with that?
Lamar, are you ready?
I'm ready when you are.
Okay. I talked to Terra Nova Engineers. They're a civil structural engineering firm. And they've looked at options A and B. And they've kind of thrown in a C also. Bo, do you have that A and B plan?
Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I sent you that, weeks ago also.
Yeah, I put what you sent me.
And you may have to turn it a couple ways to get it right. Incidentally, Terra Nova is a small civil engineering firm, and I think they're willing to help us with some of these options.
How do you spell that?
Terra Nova,
Cara, C-A-R-A?
Terra as in Nova, T-E-R-A, Nova.
Oh, okay.
You want me to keep turning it?
Yeah, let's see. I'm not quite sure which. I think we're still
It
upside.
depends on if you want to read the words on here or the words on here.
Where it says park, does it actually mean hotel?
Well, or it's reversed.
I think we're still
Still upside, sideways.
that's the, I think we need to go over to the left.
And
No,
we're
you were
not
right.
seeing it on Zoom, so.
Oh, it doesn't screen share.
Yeah, the title block is on the bottom, so if you can get the title block where it's horizontal, I think we're good.
Not quite.
I'm getting dizzy, Bo.
Oh, me too.
There you
That was it. Wilson was straight up on the bottom, wasn't it?
It was over there.
I think it's the other way.
There we are.
Yeah, I think it's maybe to the right.
But it's wrong.
There's your guardrail.
Yeah. It may be another slide. Go to the next slide.
Are you looking for option B?
Yeah, option A and B. There we go, where the red is. Yeah. Okay, that's option A. Terra Nova kind of like this option.
So can you review that quickly? Is that where?
That's where we get rid of the guardrail completely, and then we replace it in the red where it's a smaller trench that has grading over it.
Right through the road, right?
Mhm.
Goes clear across the road.
And if you go down to the next one, Bo, which is option B, where they were talking, they said that this was okay too. They have to do a hydraulic study to determine how much water is actually coming down that road. I think that's why Wilson put the ditch as big as they thought it was needed to capture the water that they think in the 100-year plan to coming down Hotel Street. And then there's an option C where they think that they could contour the road to make a swale in the road, which is really not a trench, but it's just a low position in the road, more like a U-shaped,
Huh.
and it will channel the water down into an expanded catch basin that doesn't really even have to go across the road. It'll join in where the existing catch basin is that Wilson put in initially.
Sorry. By the stone fence, by the stone wall. Is that the catch basins where it ultimately goes under the road? Is that what you're saying it is?
Right
What's-
there where Bo's got his cursor there's the wall there.
Yeah.
And that's the existing catch basin right there. You see that? Okay. I did mention that a lot of trucks, when they do come down that road, have a tendency to hit the ice and then slide into the wall.
Mhm.
And they said that they can contour the road such that it, can prevent them from hitting the wall. But they have to come out, and they said they would, to come out and really look at this and propose some plans and develop some engineering documents.
Okay.
And their owner hasn't contacted me yet because they've had some, excuse me, some family issues, I guess emergencies or something like that. But I think that they're willing to work with us and develop some options that will work.
Okay, this is all very interesting. I don't guess they gave you any kind of a price range on it.
I asked that, and then, they said, well, we don't have enough information to give you a price. So the first thing they have to do is come out.
Yeah.
And they have to develop an engineering hydraulic study, and then they have to develop some drawings. Usually a drawing is like anywhere from a couple $1,000 usually. And depends on how much detail we want them to provide, and then how much detail we can take to a contractor to actually put this in the ground. So there's some steps that have to be hurdled first before we can even know how much this costs.
Todd, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
At our last meeting, I don't think you were there. Planning Commission, some of the commissioners really felt like this was out of the Planning Commission's purview. Since we had been, Phil had been so kind to work with Planning Commission, I wanted to continue to get information and follow up with him. What would be his next steps with BOT from your point of view, Todd?
Pretty much turn all information over to staff, and then staff would have to basically put it into the mix as far as resources, time and money, basically to get them out and take a look. So we need all their contact information. And just basically the next step would be when we can, I'm assuming they'll charge us to come out and take a look. So when we can afford to bill for the look, to do the preliminary assessments. Yeah. So that would be the next step.
Is it your guess, Phil, that contouring the road would be the least expensive of all three options, or do you know?
If they can just provide a swale in the road to channel the water into maybe an expanded catch basin, that would be the cheapest option.
Yeah, I mean, almost like
Because if you get into a new trench and new grading, that's more money. So if you can eliminate those, the new concrete, and that has to be in a reinforced structure. I mean, there's more to it than just digging, a trench.
yeah.
You want something to last. So if they can do a swale, I should say, then that will be probably the cheapest option. But again, they have to do a engineering study on hydraulics to determine how much water they have to channel.
Right.
So, there is maybe some upside to this, but I'm not sure if when they would come out and how much that would cost.
Right.
Which way
Well,
does this
what I'm
road
hearing
go?
from Todd, that's something that staff will have to determine working closely with them. Is it Becky or Bo that he should work with, Todd?
They if I may say, they're gonna, I talked to them today. They said they're gonna have more information to me later in the week when the owner gets back in the office. So when I get some more information, I can relay that to you.
Okay.
Could I ask Phil a question? I'm not
Yes,
real good
yeah.
at understanding drawings. If you're coming down, downhill,
Yeah.
does the swale go to the right or to the left?
Well, no, it would follow Hotel Street from, you know, up above where the, you know, the guardrail starts. Where
Uh-huh,
the
but go
water
over.
is actually coming in from up on Illinois Street. And when it hits that swell, it's just a depression that helps channel that water and keeps
Into
that
that.
water in that swell
Uh-huh.
till it gets down into the catch basin.
Cause right now, or for years, there was that little dip that's channeled it going across. So this would make it go the other way and down and then into the Stilling Basin, correct?
Well, it would go down into the catch basin that is already there. You see where the little cursor is going around? That's an existing
That's where
structure right
that
there.
is.
So
Yeah.
what we may have to do is just make that a little bigger or make another catch basin that doesn't even have to go across the street. It could just be an extension of that existing catch basin, and then you wouldn't even have to go across the street with the new trench.
Oh. Okay,
Does that make sense?
it's complicated,
Sort
but
of. No, not really. You know, you could, this is a very simple project.
well, it sounded
It,
simpler.
it's been made complicated. So,
Okay,
Over-engineered, I believe you told us, Phil. Todd, is there any action that's needed by planning commission to get this going with staff?
Not at this time.
Okay, so Phil just needs to continue to provide information. Is it Bo or Becky? Who does he deal with?
I'd say both.
Bo, okay. Phil, if you get stuck anywhere, feel free to let me know. The only other thing we were working on with Phil was, the retaining wall. And that Becky asked you to work on, that supports Pine Street. There was issues with that. Has that continued?
what was that
on?
again? What was that again, Lamar?
The retaining wall at the rear of the property, on Pine Street.
I haven't heard anything. I talked to the property owner. And I think he was gonna conduct or get himself a survey, conduct a survey to find out if that wall is in fact on his property or is it on the city property? And I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything? So I haven't heard anything more than that he was going to try to get a survey crew out there to determine, you know, who shares responsibility for that wall. Because I do know that wall sits right on top of a water line.
Okay,
So usually a water line has an easement. So, you know, my question is, does that easement part of the city, or is that, you know, I should think it would be the city, so I don't know. But
Okay.
that wall, it has some issues, so it needs to be repaired.
Todd, this is something that Becky asked us / Phil to get involved in. And, I don't know if anybody is following this to see that it doesn't fall through the cracks. Do you know, Todd? Is Becky on this? Bo, do you know if you're on it or Becky is?
Yeah, I just went out to that one preliminary site visit, and had a look, but I haven't heard anything else, except, Phil's updates, so.
Okay, well, we need to have next steps on this. This is the property at 10285 Mountain Lane. Would the next steps be best served by staff, Todd, or what do you think?
Any activity from that would be staff.
Okay. Just want to make sure we don't forget about it because this wall does need to be repaired. Rocco has a question.
Yeah, hi, Phil. Thank you for reaching out to Terra Nova. They may or may not be able to work on this project, but if you develop a relationship with them, it might be helpful for future projects that we invite this Terra Nova, if you think you're getting a good feeling from them, to bid on future projects, so we don't have the issue of having things over-engineered.
Yeah, they're a small enough firm where I don't think they have a lot of, overhead costs like, a bigger firm would. So I think their hourly rate would be lower. I haven't talked to the owner yet. I think the people I've talked to seem to be willing to work on this and, provide some solutions. I think they're willing to work with the town, and they already have a project up here. From what I understand, I don't know exactly what, but they said they were working on a project here in Green Mountain Falls.
Good, good. Well, Phil, I just can't thank you enough for all your efforts. I know you spent so much time in volunteering on this, and we will depend on staff to pick up the ball for both of these projects going forward. And I know you'll be communicating with staff. And again, if you get stuck, please let me know.
Okay, I'm glad to help.
Anything else, Phil, that we need to know, or commissioners, any other questions for Phil?
Thank you.
And Lisa, I can't see you, so if you have something, please let me know.
No, thank you. And Ann
Okay.
said, no, thank you.
Okay, thank y'all. Thank you, Phil.
And if I find out anything else this week, I'll let you know.
Please do.
All right.
All right. Let's pick our agenda back up and pop up to number 6A, commission reappointments and discussion. I've gotten responses from Lisa, who is interested in an additional 1 year. I think there's questions before I go into that. Bo, Rocco, I think had some questions about this process. Rocco, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Lamar. This whole thing has been confusing to me. Why we need to submit reappointment requests, because I looked at the October 3rd trustee minutes, and the resolution, which extends all the appointed terms, has already been passed unanimously by the trustees. So that's resolution 2023-08, the term adjustments. So I'd like town staff to explain the process and why we need to reapply when it's already been approved.
Sorry, guys, I stepped out for a sec to hand Phil an application. If I did catch the second part of that, so we're talking about the process for appointments for commission and committees.
Yes. Did you hear Rocco's question?
I didn't hear the start of it.
Most everybody on the commission was pushed out a year before they expire. And so his question is, why do they need to reapply when they already have a year added to their service?
Gotcha.
They don't expire
The
for a year.
main thing I'm hoping to accomplish today is I've got this memo that I'd like to complete, and this really is going to be a reset for terms. And so what would be good is for you guys to decide who's going to be on a 1 year and who's going to be on a 2-year term.
Okay, I have commissioners who've responded to that. Lisa wants 1 year, Ann wants 1 year. I'm open to 2 years. Mike has not responded to me. I'm not even sure, what he wants to do at all. And Rocco just needed some clarification.
Well, I mean, the resolution 2023-08 has already passed. It's already extended for the 5 commissioners to December 31st, 2025. That passed on October 3rd. So why are we doing this?
So they've got 2 years, right? Everybody has 2 years.
Hey, Rocco, we're gonna have to redo that.
Is it because one was a resolution and one was an ordinance?
This has been a really confusing process for everyone, so. We need to reset because we had no records. And so we're doing a reset. Yes, we passed that resolution, but when we get people realigned with what they want to do, whether it be 1 or 2 years, we'll have to redo that resolution.
So here's another question. You know, I've got Ann and I've got Lisa who both said they want to do 1 year. So if they do 1 year, is that on top of the 2 years you've already given them? So now they're doing 3 years? Or is this 1 year starting January 1, 2000?
It'll be, everything's going to reset to January.
So I'm still not clear. Let's say Lisa and Ann want 1 year. Do they drop back to December 2024?
They'll need to reapply in December 2024.
Okay. But they only want 1 year. So if they serve, right now they expire, they have 2 years.
Yeah, take what's been done before and basically pitch it. This is a total reset to try to get everyone and everything realigned.
Okay, but I'm just trying to get clear on the answer. If they've each told me they want 1 year. So if they want 1 year, how do they do that?
They apply this year and then they apply next year.
But that would be 2 years.
No, that's 1 year because you'd be serving from January 2024 until December 2024. And then when they reapply, they'd reapply for 2 years. That way we're staggered.
But if they only want to serve the year of 2024, how do they do that?
Just by applying for 1 year and not reapplying in the future.
Even though they've been given an expiration of 2025, that will not be forced on them. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think anything is going to be forced on anybody, but I think that resolution that you're referencing should just not be. Yeah, it just needs to be scrapped. We went down that road and the process proved to be quite a bit more cumbersome than that. That didn't solve, the issue.
So to be clear, anyone that wants to serve starting January 1st, 2024 must reapply and they must state, I want 1 year or I want 2 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And the goal, can I speak? The goal is to have either 2 1 year, 3 2 year, or 3 1 year to have 50-50 so that.
So
No,
I think 3 year is gone.
no, I said 1 and 2 year.
Oh, sure.
So you don't want us all to choose just 1 year, do you? Wouldn't that wouldn't achieve your goal, right?
To be staggered.
Right,
we don't
so
have
you
full
want-
committee turnover.
3 2 2 1. Do that again, Todd. What do you mean?
3 of you will likely select 2 year.
Oh,
terms.
3 for 2 years and
then-
2 for 1 year. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Okay. And then during the year, if somebody, let's say I resign in May and we need a replacement, that replacement will fill, they won't have 2 years from that
No.
May date. They'll fill my expiration and then
It'll
okay,
fill out-
got it.
It'll be. their
Gotcha,
term
gotcha,
will
gotcha.
expire on the
Okay. Just to keep
position.
it so that we have, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Hey, so tonight, well, let's just see where Rocco is. Rocco, where are you on all this?
I'm confused by the whole thing. I think, I mean, honestly, I feel like if town staff can't do the little things right, how are they going to do the bigger things right? This does not boost my confidence at all. You know, you look at all the time that was wasted, put into the resolution, and then the trustees discuss it, then they approve it. And then we get a request from the town manager to refill an application. This is effed up. It really is. And I think whoever our elected officials are need to understand that there needs to be some very fundamental structural changes in what's going on, because I see no accountability here and I'm seeing a lot of wasted time. Now I'm going to submit an application. All right. But are things going to get better? This just seems like a big waste of time. And are our trustees going to hold our paid staff accountable? And
I
that's
can
not
speak
an
to that.
open-ended question. We have 2 trustees on the line. Are you going to hold people accountable?
Nick or Todd, do you want to comment?
I think it makes sense. You know, it's just kind of orderly. Makes sense. Maybe they realized later that it was kind of confusing, and so it's simple math now.
Nick or Todd, any comments to Rocco's question?
Yeah, to the best of our abilities, but it's not just it's really not as simple as it may seem.
Yeah, I think all we can do is just have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the follow-up is now we have 2 months where planning commission has to flex our meetings, which are pretty much set in stone. And I'm hearing things like holidays and election cycles. And I got to tell you, having served on planning commission for several years, we haven't had to flex like this. And I'm seeing the same lack of process in the budget. And we're having to discuss budget tonight before it goes back to the trustees when the trustees have already seen the budget. So, I mean, when it comes time for, reviews on these people, I want the trustees to remember what's going on and why everyone's running around at the last minute.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to have a good, solid conversation with staff and BOT in regards to what the process behind, what the thinking, what the idea was of proposing a budget before committees were able to discuss what they may need for the next year. So, that's a good valid point, and it's we just have to have conversations, and it all begins here with comments like you're making, Rocco.
Well, I think the issue with the budget was the committees weren't asked by BOT or staff about our budgets and what we wanted to submit. And staff submitted their budgets in November without input from the committees. We're only doing it. We're doing all the committees are doing their requests tomorrow.
Out of curiosity, were you given an explanation at all? Mr. brought this up.
No, we sort of found out about it by accident. So.
Okay. All right. Duly noted. Yeah.
We never were asked, but all the committee chairs jumped in and offered once we learned that was happening. But it was, it sort of felt like an afterthought.
Well, it all starts here, communication and out of curiosity, Bo, you're there, correct?
Yep, I'm right here.
Any explanation for a preliminary budget before committees were addressed, or is that, was it just to
Yeah,
get
sure.
your,
So,
what room there was, what wiggle room there was for budgets for committees?
sure. We're required to post a preliminary budget and there's dates and deadlines, and I'm not sure exactly, but it's around a couple months before the end of the year. And then before the start of the new year, we're required to adopt a budget. So we just took a stab at it, got it posted, conformed to statutory requirements. But the real work is happening at the December 12th meeting. That's where BOT approves it or modifies it or, whatever. And then we structured an opportunity for staff to present to BOT and then to all the commissioners.
So I guess like next year, could we start a little earlier and get the input from the committees before staff post a budget? Do you think that might be a possibility?
Well, I mean, possibly. I think the thinking, and I'm not certain of all the mechanics, but I think the thinking behind putting it in the sequence that you saw it is that, like Public Works went out and
Doesn't make any
they've
sense.
got real needs, like our grader is in danger. Some of those things are gonna, the marshal's office is gonna be a priority. And so they got first shot at it that way, but at the end of the day, the BOT is gonna consider all of the requests at one time, which is December 12th. So the sequence coming up to that, I don't want to seem callous, but I want to say it doesn't really matter how that comes together, because the decision is going to happen on this date at the same time. And so
Right.
it was just, how do we, spread out our work session times? How do we stay in conformity with statute?
Now,
So,
is it,
and
now is it-
then we had an amended budget. Like the other thing that ate our lunch is we had to do an amended budget pretty late in the year for this year, an amended 23 budget. And hopefully that never happens again, right? You never want to do an amended budget. You want to get it right. But that's why we didn't start earlier.
It does
Now, Lamar,
happen,
There's,
and
there's,
you know
if
what?
if I could interject, there's another piece, there's other pieces going on as well. And that one was Proposition HH. And now there's the governor's order on the special session. And so this may
Yep.
come up again tomorrow night.
You just never know. One thing you can do, which I've been interested in with Zoom, even if I can't come to the trustees meetings, I always tune in and try to understand what they're working toward. It doesn't mean I really understand it, but I do tune in.
Nick, I think your question is good. Best practices are to start definitely before the last quarter. And a lot of times it's the third quarter that people are working on budget requests and putting budgets together. I don't know why we had to have an amended budget or what happened to cause that, but you're definitely talking about best practices, and having the committees only have 15 minutes to present their budgets, I think is also, and again, late, right before the decisions to be made, is concerning.
now the other concern, now is another one of your concerns that your request won't really be considered because it's so late? I know
Well,
you speak for other committees, but what's your concern mainly with it?
again, our commission does not have as urgent needs, at least this year, as the other committees do.
Right.
But I think the optics aren't great that we have 15 minutes and we're sort of it feels like that we're an afterthought.
Lamar, I need to interrupt you.
Yeah,
Sorry, respectfully. Nick is not on the planning commission and I don't know what's going on here. We're talking on and on. I need to leave the meeting now. I just want to say thank you to the staff. Thank you to the board. I'm very willing to cooperate with their efforts to make our rotations more seamless. And if there was a mistake made, there was a mistake made. We're only human. And I think just reiterating this, Rocco, over and over in Lamar is inappropriate. Good night.
I would agree with that. And bye, Lisa. Thank you.
okay, I think we were on to the budget discussion rather than the rotation discussion. But we still have some things to cover in our agenda. Are you able to stay, Lisa?
Lisa, I think had to go. She just left.
Okay. We still have a quorum, I guess. So the fee schedule update, what did you want to cover there, Rocco?
I wanted to circle back because I think this relates to the budget as well. When you wait till the last minute, I know Prop HH happened, but there's some proactive things you can do to line things up and have a contingency plan and a main plan for the budget. But it involves feedback. When you start this late in the process, there's not a lot of time for feedback to get to your committees. I think this is an example with the fee schedule. We gave our input to the fee schedule and then nothing. So it fell into a black hole. And I think there was some concern that some of the fees were too high. I think that Julia had some input on the fee schedule, and then it left us, and then nothing. And so I know that we didn't want to have too high of a fee schedule to where people would not come before the planning commission and try to skirt the permitting process. And I would like to know where the fee schedule is at. And I know, Ann Esch talks about going to the Board of Trustee meetings, and that's great. But as a planning commissioner, we need that feedback so that if we don't get to a board meeting, we know where things went based on our recommendation, and then they come back to us for feedback.
Sure, I can get you an update. You're right. We finished up with it here in planning, and there was quite a bit of back and forth. I think it spanned 2 sessions. And I have that bit from planning. What I did with it after is I sent it on to staff, and I got a little bit back from most departments. The marshal's office is like Marshall Goings was shocked at what is on our fee schedule. And I ran into a little bit of a legal quandary. And I just recently got the answer, but there's a bunch of stuff that we're trying to enforce in town that's essentially unenforceable unless it's on the fee schedule. So in our current fee schedule, I shouldn't even say this right now, but we're going to just do this. So on our current fee schedule, under law enforcement, I think there's one item, which is like VIN number identification or verification or something like that. It's a VIN verification. So everything that the marshal wants to enforce needs to be on that fee schedule. So it's turned into a huge project for that department. I'm actually still waiting on more. We keep thinking of more items and just entire categories that need to be on the fee schedule. It's going to be pages long. It's going to turn into a whopper. But it's going to be good. And I got with our prosecutor, Deborah Island, for some guidance, and Judge Price, and looked at how other municipalities are doing it. So I'm kind of gathering additional categories. I think I'm pretty solid on the planning commission and, you know, land use building side of it. And really the hang up now is law enforcement. And then once I have all that, I've got to put the corresponding code section to it, which is going to just be me sitting at my desk for a while, going through and referencing what part of the code authorizes that fee. So if you look at our current fee schedule now, it has that. But this is going to be quite a bit more robust. Just trying to tackle things like, you know, the things we talk about here, compliance with building codes and enforcement and stuff like that. So that needs to be on there to really be enforceable.
So Bo, have there been any changes to what the planning commission recommended for the planning and building part of the fee schedule?
No, I put that in there as we last discussed it in that last meeting with Julia. And whatever you guys came up with is going to get pitched just like that.
Would there be any way, Bo, that you could send that out to all planning commissioners so that we can just review it before it gets done like that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll remind commissioners not to discuss it amongst ourselves via email. It'll just be for information purposes only. And if there's a comment that you need to make, just send it just to me, because we can't have a group discussion. Another discussion item that came up for tonight is the decision about the minor site plan. And whether or not we want to revert some of those duties back to planning commission. The big issue with that is we have to have people willing to do those pieces who serve on planning commission. And I don't know that we have anyone willing to do that. Do we have any discussion on that?
I think Lisa wants to do it.
You gonna volunteer her when she's not here?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anybody that's here that's volunteering for it. So I think for now, we have to leave the minor site plan on table 5.1 as is. Unless I hear a clamor to do something else, which can always be brought up later if there are people who want to do that. And last but not least, we have up on the screen what Bo needs to fill out. Bo said that he could get paperwork. He's got Ann's paperwork, her application, and she has expressed an interest in 1 year. And I'm still confused if that's really 2 years, but 1 year, I don't know. But anyway, she's expressed an interest in 1 year. And Lisa will get paperwork to you if she hasn't already. She has expressed interest in 1 year. I will get paperwork to you, and I'm open for 2 years. Rocco, what is your thought? You said you would apply and get paperwork in. What is your thought about term length?
Yeah, I could drop something by. It looks like they want 3 members for 2-year terms. I'll put in for 2, and if they have more interest from other people, I can go down to 1.
Okay, we've got our 2 1-year people have already spoken up, and we need 3 2-year people from what I heard Todd say tonight. So that would be you, me, and I don't know what Mike's gonna say. I don't know if that helps you, Bo.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's going to keep us going for now. And then I would like to present completed applications to the board for approval. And so we have, about a month here to get that in order and whatnot.
What would be your deadline to get that paperwork in?
I think we're gonna try to post that 12-12 meeting early, just because it is gonna have a lot of material in it. And so, without looking at a calendar, I would say just midweek before that. I don't know if that turns into the 8th or something like that.
Why don't we say the 8th?
Yeah, but as much time as you can give me with that is greatly appreciated.
Well, would you like more time? Would you like?
No, that's fine. If,
Does the 8th get you there?
yeah, that gets me there for sure.
Okay.
There, Lamar, there are also 3 alternates. And I did put it on the politics page, hoping somebody will apply for those, that would be nice.
It would be, and we don't have a whole lot of people in Green Mountain Falls clamoring to volunteer. So I'm thankful for the few that we have. It's very important to try to get done what needs to be done by the town. I think I've run through everything on our list. Is there anybody that has something else they want to bring up?
If this is a good moment, I'd like to just kind of head on address the, conversation earlier, circle back for a second.
Sure.
There's nobody here, staff wise, who thinks this is good. To take the gloves off, it turned into a total shit show. And what happened is staff over the course of the years has accepted applications for committees or commissions at face value with the date that's on it. And so if somebody applies mid-year to join, that staff just interpreted that as the beginning of the term. And that was wrong. That should have been just completing the vacancy of the seat that was vacated. I don't know if this makes sense, but if somebody's in a 3-year seat and they leave at year 2, that next applicant is just completing that term and then needs to reapply. And nobody here understood it that way. And so we were resetting terms based on the application date, which is completely nuts. It's not, it's not the right thing to do. And then no part of the application was the, what's the term that you're applying for? Right. And so I started asking questions. I'm like, okay, we're coming into appointments. What does that mean? What are the requirements? What do I have to check? And fast forward, here we are today, everyone's like, holy cow, this is a hot mess. And I'm sorry that it turned into that, but it started out with some good questions. And I agree with you that these questions should have been asked earlier. We've been ambling on this way for who knows long. I mean, I'm still new, coming on, 10 months here. I still feel new. And, I don't know what to tell you. There's not a way to make this sound good, but this was the best I could come up with for resetting it. Okay, here we're in this situation. What do I do with this? Right. And so just getting you guys to volunteer, whether you're a 1-year or 2-year term, I felt that should be a decision that you make. So I don't know. And if there's a smoother, cleaner way to get there, I'm sure open to it. But that's a little bit of background. None of this was just grossly negligent. None of this was, people not caring. It was people just interpreting things without taking that extra step to get with legal or, to ask more questions. And we just took it for granted. Well, this is what the guy before me did, so I'll just keep doing it this way. And I couldn't get it to make sense. And I really tried.
Well, totally understand, Bo. Thanks for giving us that backstory because, we didn't know any of that.
Good job.
Yeah, Bo, thank you. I know you have some messes to clean up from some prior town employees. I would just say, it would have benefited everybody if planning commission and the committees had seen this paperwork before it went to the board of trustees and got approved, these resolutions and everything. And so, you know, I've worked in bureaucracies, and you get a piece of information and you say, okay, what do I know? And then the other follow-on question should be, well, who else needs to know? And so I think, you know, we want to be here and make the process, you know, go smoothly. So I would just say, if you think we need to know, communicate with us, and that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I agree with you completely. I heard you loud and clear at the last meeting, and I think communication should be at the forefront of everything we do. So I am making a better effort to do that. And, you know, I take that to heart, and that's certainly something I think we can do better at. And I'm open to making those efforts. So.
Well, and one other thing to keep in mind is the committees are here to be of support and to help. And if we have the information, a lot of times we can maybe catch stuff before it goes out and that sort of thing. So the more you use us, the better job all of us can do. So that's what we want to provide.
I appreciate that. And I can tell that all of you are in this for the right reasons. And I think it benefits the town, and the town is lucky to have all of you on.
Thank you, Bo. I appreciate you saying that, and totally feel the same way about you. Absolutely. And so anyway, I know a lot of times y'all are just scrambling and feel like you don't have the time to go through those additional steps. If you can, it would be helpful to everybody. Well, thanks for everybody's comments. Nick, did you have anything else? Todd, anything else?
I do not.
Mayor has stepped out as well.
Okay, Nick,
I do not. Thank you very much, though. I appreciate it.
thanks for attending. This committee doesn't get much visibility, so it's nice to have another BOT member here as well, and we appreciate your interest in your attention.
I appreciate your volunteerism. That's awesome. I really